Welcome to the second session of second course. We're going to talk about the definition of Inna Lillah wa Inna Ilaihi Raji'un cycle. We are from Him and we are returning to Him. We're going to talk about the levels of knowing God, the concepts of unipolar and dipolar universe. We're going to talk about the constant observer and in motion observer, concepts of beyond space and time, the explanation of the protected tablet, Lawh Mahfuz, faith and destiny. We're going to talk about the concept of divine permission, inshallah, God willing, the concept of determinism and free will. We're going to talk about the type of determinism which is known and unknown. We're going to talk about Ma'rifat and Erfan, the categories of people of Erfan, and the law of cross. As we received all the halghehs last session, we don't have any halghehs tonight. We're going to start our conversation with a common understanding of the cycle of Inna Lillahi wa Inna Ilaihi Raji'un and also afterlife. This verse from Quran that states that we are from Him and we are returning to Him is often used when there is something negative happening or impacting individuals, for example, death. And the impact is not just something negative. So anything that is impactful in life, for example, birth, death, marriage, everything could be impactful. And this verse is not just belongs to the difficulties of life that we should remember that we are going to return to Him, but rather every moment of life is uh, in the journey of returning to Him, and we are always on the journey toward Him. But because of the faulty perceptions and misinterpretation of individuals, usually they remember God or relate to Him when there are difficulties, and often God is forgotten when there are the moments of happiness. And a lot of the individuals, especially Iranians, uh, they, or even maybe all the Muslims, when they hear this Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un, subconsciously they remember death. But this notion of we are from God and we are returning to Him is not just belongs to death and us, but everything is constantly moving toward God. And the notion of us returning to God states that we are going toward sublimity and kamal, and we're not gonna be always stuck in the neediness of this dimension and the body. Now, one of the common understandings of afterlife, uh, after death, is that we are from Him, kind of demonstrating this descending motion, and then we have this very bottom of the cycle, which is the farthest point from the beginning. And then from here, we return to Him. And then there's this common understanding that after death, the ones that they've done good, they go to heaven, and then the ones that they didn't do good, they go to hell. And then there is this verse in Quran that they say that people that they go to hell, they are eternally there. So the question is that why individuals would remain eternally in hell, and what does that mean? We would answer this question more comprehensively on fourth course, but here we just pointed out briefly while we're addressing this cycle is that throughout this Inna lillahi wa inna ilaihi raji'un cycle, we are in a journey to Him in various different lives. And when we say various different lives, we don't mean in the sense of incarnation, classic incarnation, kind of dying and reborning here. So this reborn, being reborn and dying, it doesn't belong to this earth, but rather we just die and go to the next life. And the next life and previous lives are completely different sets of dimensions, sets of rules that uh, is applied in terms of the observer's journey associated with the philosophy of creation, which is Kamal. Completely different sets. We will discuss that in depth. And hell is one of those lives. And in fact, everyone's going through that stage and is with no exception. So at some point in the cycle, there is this um, return that one of these stages is hell, and everyone has to go through it in order for that unification at the top or that return to be completed. Now, this is a model that Dr. Taheri um, demonstrates in terms of the entire journey from the descending path, Inna Lillah, and the ascending path, Inna Ilaihi Raji'un. And at the very bottom, which is Asfalu Safilin, is the most inferior, the farthest part of the cycle, the maximum level of multiplicity, the least amount of ishq, and the lowest amount of awareness and highest amount of neediness is there at the beginning. And here, where we are at right now, is where the space, time, and opposition in place. Between here, which is our world, and all the cosmos inside it, the Earth and the entire cosmos, it's here. Um, Between here and the bottom of the cycle, we don't know how many lives we lived and died and went through. But what we know is that those were not exactly the same as here, and they had an extra dimension as we go toward the bottom. So we had space, time, opposition, and the dimension X that we don't know what it is because we lost it, and we have no way to understand what that is. We don't remember it. Here we know that we have opposition, space, and time, and that gives us the experience that we're experiencing right now in terms of being in the body, being limited by the space dimension. When we want to travel, it takes time. We age. We need to feed ourselves. And opposition, we know that everything that we define is the gray area between the black and white of definitions and attributes and qualities, black and white, day and night, multiplicity, unity, order, disorder, etc. And time that we know, it gives the impression of past, present, and future. And these are the dimensions that we are dealing right now. So with each death, we go to the next level and then we lose one dimension. And after the death that occurs here, we lose the space dimension and we become dominant over that space dimension. And then in that way, we are no longer limited by those features. We don't have a body, we don't need food, physical food, and we also can be in multiple places at the same time. um, as we wish to be somewhere, we will be there. It doesn't take time for us to get somewhere, etc. So now, with this cycle, that Inna Lillahi wa Inna Ilaihi Raji'un cycle, is the journey, as we said, that we are separating from Him and then we are returning to Him, and then hell being one of the stages in the middle, somewhere in the timelessness, in the beyond time, or no time dimensions or state, which starts from here. So where we say like opposition and time exist from this uh, place up, we don't have any space where we only have time and opposition. Now from there, hell is one of the stages here that we demonstrated as one of these points here. And everyone goes through that. Everyone has to pass through that. Now, if we were not to pass through it and get stuck there, then that would imply that this cycle would be more like a taking revenge cycle, in a way that God wanted to just take revenge and then just have some individuals stuck there because of their non-harmonious operation. And the other implication would be that God would have some impurity that it wants to kind of get rid of through this process, purifying himself and get rid of those impurities and trap them in the hell, which again is contradictory to its definition that we establish. So we can really imagine a model that in that model, some people would die and then get stuck in the hell, and then some people would just go to heaven, and that's it. So there is, because there is no returning to him aspects of it, and there's no resolution of the creation. The journey is incomplete in a way. Otherwise, unless someone wants to kind of assume that the whole creation is meant for revenge. So if we assume such a scenario, that everyone goes through this cycle, everyone returns to him regardless, and everyone will pass through the hell as well. So the question would be, how is it important how we lived? Because ultimately we're gonna go through, everyone gonna go through hell, and ultimately everyone gonna make it. So why is it important to know the natural law, be harmonious, etc.? The question is, which is a legitimate question, the answer lies in the goal and purpose of creation. This creation certainly must have a goal, and only when this goal fulfilled is that the cycle is resolved, and only then the cycle would have a quality that is toward a specific task description. So imagine a bus is going toward a specific destination, and everyone is on the bus, but the quality of the experience of the journey is different. Some people sitting in a nicer seat, some people have to stand, some people are being squished by lack of space. So the quality of the journey is different. The same with us when we have different knowledge of Kamal, then the quality of our experience in each life and the journey is different. Just like here, we see that some people come to this world without remembering how they lived or what life they lived before, and what dimension or how they what they experienced. But we can certainly see that the the knowledges that we bring with ourselves are different, even among the um, twins, even within twins, that they're born in the same circumstances, same parents, even from one cell mitosis, um, it they still have completely different characteristics. And what that tell us is that they bring some sort of information that is not related to the circumstance, the environmental circumstances, and that knowledge comes from some elsewhere. So that knowledge is coming from, in our view, it comes from the previous life, and it's the package of information that determines the level of Kamal orientation of the individuals. The more Kamal oriented they are, the more harmonious or positive attributes they have. You see some child that enjoys mocking others, disturbing them, stealing their toys, bothering them, and you see some others that are really generous, really kind. So how do they have those attributes? Is based on the type of knowledge of Kamal, the type of experience that they went through in a previous life. So um, even though that they might look almost identical physically, genetically, but and also environmentally, but their attributes are completely different, and that tells us that this world is not the initial point at the bottom of the cycle, because this initial point would basically imply that everyone needs to start from the same circumstances and same type of operation, but that's not what we are observing among our children when they're born very young ages. So the difference between these characteristics are tell us that there's a difference between the knowledge of Kamal and the different operation. And also there's a verse in Quran that talks about uh, it says that we will take you somewhere that would not remember this life, just like we brought you from somewhere that you don't remember. So same here. We came from somewhere that we don't remember. We are going somewhere that we're not going to remember how we got there and what was the experience of this life. But as we established before, the only knowledge that we can take with us is the knowledge of Kamal, but we don't know how we gain those knowledges. Just like right now, if someone asks, why are you so enthusiastic about understanding the natural laws or Kamal? We really don't know. All we can say is that there's just this inner desire, and this inner desire is just present. Why it's present, we don't know. Where is it coming from? We don't know. But it's there, and that sets us aside from some that they don't really care about the philosophy of creation or why we are here, or why it doesn't even matter for them. So the difference is not explainable. We don't know why and how we have this urge to know and to discover. And that comes from knowledge of Kamal in the previous life. And we don't know how we got it. We don't know what type of experiences led us to develop some sort of awareness, such awareness. So that's kind of similar to type of experience that we um, have in terms of knowledge of Kamal and the information that we bring to this life. So this world is not the beginning, the initial start of the experience of lives in the cycle. And we don't remember the details. These details of each life, it's completely top secret, and it's actually stored in a protected tablet that is containing all the information of the entire cycle. And how that works is that because it's beyond time, when the times dimension is lifted, the lack of limitation of time causes the past and present and future to collide. And then there's this continuous existence of entire information at the same time. It it is like the cycle has not begun yet. It has begun and ended, and it's simultaneously happening all of it at the same time. And that's basically a definition of timelessness or beyond time. So, from an observer's perspective, that is in that state of a state of no time, of beyond time, or timelessness, it can look at the entire cycle in a matter of 0 second. And for, let's say, if the cycle would take millions of years or billions of years to complete for the entire cycle, for the observers at the top of the cycle and the timelessness would take 0 second. Almost, you could say that as soon as the journey begun, it ended. That and then the beginning and the end are coexisting. So now, why do we don't have details of the previous life? Because they're top secrets, and it would basically make the philosophy of creation in a lot of ways redundant. It's almost like knowing the answers of the questions of the exam. But what we bring with ourselves, as I mentioned, is the collections of knowledge of Kamal that we gain throughout the experiences that we go through. And that gives us a unique characteristics of each individual, and their unique operation. So this world is just a very small portion of the big journey, which, as I said, consists of uh, all the cosmos, the entire galaxies and stars. All that is basically just this. It belongs to this world, which is one section here of this whole entire cycle as we see. So, as I mentioned, this world is limited by space-time opposition. We die, and when we die, there's this intermediary stage between each life called barzakh. We will talk about it later. And then after barzakh, after like exiting this intermediary stage, we enter the next life and we lose a dimension. We become dominant over space dimension, and then we only have um time and opposition. And then after that, we die again. We go to the barzakh again, and then in that barzakh, it's timeless, and which any experience of timelessness feels eternal in a way that the observer would not know how they got there and whether they're gonna get out of it at any point at all. So the feeling of the eternity is the lack of time, the, the lack of dimension of the time, or the limitation of the dimension of time. So every life that we live and we die, we become lighter and less needy, more needless. And this type of model is completely oppositional to classic incarnation in a way that they believe that we keep coming back to this world. We reborn to different forms, and again and again and again until we just get out, and then exit the cycle to nirvana. Uh, and that model, we don't believe in it, and there are so many issues with it because the idea is that their idea is that we come, so we need to deal with our karmas, and we come again and again and again. So finally, we uh, remove our karmas. But the question is that when we come to each time we come to life, the best way if we live, we still increasing our karma. So there's no way that we're going to reduce our karma by keep coming to this world, because even by breathing and walking on grass, we are causing destruction on another living being for us to survive, just by breathing, just by walking on the grass, just by feeding ourselves. So how is that coming to this world would be any beneficial for burning away karma? So also, like, there's other issues with that model, that it kind of justifies everyone's uh, superiority or differences in terms of wealth or health, and then anyone that is suffering for any reason, they say like, well, it's your karma, you did something wrong previous life and you deserve it. And then if I'm wealthy, then I did so much good things in the past life, so I deserve it. So you better just stay poor, and I better just enjoy my wealth. And that kind of creates a lot of ignorance, and also a lack of compassion, and also a lot of judgments and quality judgments in terms of the people's inner world, and as such. So there are a lot of other issues with it. And then in one designated course, we actually challenge it practically, which basically using some halghehs um, to demonstrate practically that what is one of the arguments in terms of incarnation, that individual have access to their previous life or past life experiences, being an architect in Egypt, or a pharaoh, or a poet in France, or um, an Arif or Sufi from in past lives, or a king. All those things we can see practically. We can actually demonstrate that those are not actually the individual's memory, and then it can be cleared out. And after that, the individuals would not experience such things. So that demonstrates that is not an intrinsic connection between that information and memory and the individuals themselves, and it's mere um, disturbance. We will talk about that later. So in this life, um, our vehicle is um, physical body, and there is this conscious observer that it's the driver. We will talk about that also later. But overall, we are called humans, and humans are the conscious, the observers in this life. And as we said in first course, after we die, all our bodies would die except one continuing life, which was mental body. And that's why we call the next observer in the next life mental body. And that's how we address it. Just like we are human here, you will be a mental body next life. And that's how we operate in the spacelessness or beyond space dimension, being more lighter. And then that's how we continue our experience. Now, in the story of Adam having a bite of that forbidden fruit, that caused him to be descended, fallen from heavens to Asfalosafilin, which is the most inferior and furthest point of the cycle. Here at the bottom, approximately 6 o'clock, and that is where the lives begun, and that's the heaviest, most distant, and most needy, and the highest level of multiplicity that we begun our journey in lives. Now, the Adam story is misinterpreted in a lot of way in mainstream understanding, even among religious people, that they think like Adam was this human being that walked on earth very early on, and that's how they start interpreting, and it's a male. But here, he actually, Dr. Tari actually decoded that the Adam that is referred there is not actually a human being, but rather a metaphorical, uh, bigger body that we are all the cells of. So the Adam in that story, it's not a human being walking on earth, is actually beyond this life and actually created at the top of the cycle. We will discuss that in detail in sixth course, but I'm just pointing out that none of us is actually the atom, and we are just the cells of the atom. Atom is the biggest body of our existence, and we are Adamians. So now the collection of all Adamian would the fractals of atom or pieces of atom all combined forms the body, the whole body of atom. So atom is the in motion observer that in 0 second from the constant observer's perception, from perception of God, in 0 second went through the cycle and came back. So in the cycle of Inna lillahi wa inna ilaihi raji'un, we define two different observers. One is a constant observer and one in motion observer. The constant observer is God that exists in unipolar universe where there are no time, no space, no opposition, or no names or no attributes. And in motion observer are the Adamians. It would be Adam and the fractals. So Adam is consisted of all the Adamians, infinite levels of them, infinite numbers of them, that are experiencing, going through the cycle, experiencing various lives. And in this life, we establish the understanding that it's called human. The name of this emotion observer is human in the dimension of space-time opposition. The next life, it would be mental body. And then the previous life, it was some name that had a space-time opposition plus X dimension that was giving an extra limit of operation. So in previous life, we had an extra dimension that we actually don't know the understanding of, and we can't have a comprehension because we already lost the ability to perceive it. But there was an extra dimension that was limiting us. But from the beginning of the cycle, Adam was separated from God, and the reason and the purpose of that uh, separation also we will discuss in eighth course. But let's assume that for the observer at the top of the cycle, for God, as I mentioned, 8 million or 8 billion years took for Adam to go through the cycle and come up. For God's perception at the top, that would take 0 second. And what do we mean by 0 second is like absolutely no time. Uh, Instantaneously, Adam is separated and came back. Is like never separated, but it also separated and went through the cycle and came back. And in the story, if you remember, um, God creates Adam and congratulate himself for such a creation and ask angels to come and bow and prostrate before Adam. And all the angels do so. The first angels actually object that why you create such a creature. We were here, we were praising you, we were admiring you. Why would you do such a creation to do so much corruption? And they objected to that, and but they finally do prostrate before and bow before Adam, except Iblis, and that was uh, that caused which Iblis was one of the most favorite angels of God, and then that caused the dissension of Iblis, and also then Adam was put in heaven, and then there was the forbidden fruit. He got tempted, he had a bite of that, and he was descended too. So the whole story has it's an analogy, is a story to tell us something, to explain what happened in terms of it's an aim to explain the creation that happened beyond our comprehension, in somewhere that is no time, no space, and no opposition, and then there's all these aspects are being formed, and as these are being formed, the one observer is actually describing the story in such a way, especially for people at that time with the level of the knowledge and awareness that they had. So this model that usually understood or accepted among like people that they kind of believe in religions like monotheistic religions is that it's it's God at the top, birth here at our life, we have death, and then we have barzakh, and then we have heaven or hell, and that's it. That's how it is. But this model is wrong, as we mentioned, because there's so many issues with it. One of the uh, most important issues with it, that there is no return aspects of it. So it just get disturbs here. That's it. There's no returning resolution. And then there are a lot of other references actually in Quran in terms of Araf, heavens, Ad and Rizwan, the day of religion, the day of calculation or trial, or the day of envy, or the assembly day or disassembly day, the Armageddon, and so on. That all these levels never discussed it, and there's no place for them in this model. Dr. Tari kind of decoded it in a very particular way. And then he describes each of these levels, and then individuals are actually able to experience them through some halghehs later on in the course. So you're able to have that experience as a epiphany and revelations to know if those levels exist and how it feels after death, and so on and so forth. So in terms of the creation of Adam in Quran, we said that also in Bible we said that all the angels prostrated and bowed before Adam except Iblis. We established the understanding that this terminology of angels are a terminology that belonged to that time, and for the prophets to communicate these complicated circumstances and stories, concepts to people in a language of story and legendary stories per se. So now we know that angels are basically just agents that are holding the aspects of, or holding, executing, implementing aspects of existence. For example, gravity. What holds gravity? What operates gravity? What operates the motion of electron? How does the electron know orbit in a certain way? How does the forces operate? What holds the operation of the forces in nuclear forces, the weak forces, the strong forces, electromagnetic forces? How does all this administrate it? So they are basically like, if we would use this terminology, they would be angels. The angel that holds the gravity, the angel that holds tells the electrons to orbit this way or orbit that way. So, and then in Quran there are references of angels having you know, um, three wings or four wings, and those are basically like atoms that have two orbits or three orbits or four orbits. Um, so these are basically just metaphors that at that time they couldn't talk about like atoms being um, electrons and nucleus and things like that, and how it works in a more realistic model, but rather they just made it to this presumptions that there's these like wing being, half animal, half human, half animal, um, with wings, and then they just kind of like responsible for having administrating the needs of the existence. So now we know that all these aspects, including space, it has its own so-called angel. The time has its own angel. So every aspects of existence is being administrated, executed, implemented by something, and that something is an angel in that terminology. So the angels essentially are aspects of existence that are executing the operation. So now, going back to that analogy of all the angels bowing in front of Adam, it basically implies that the Adam becomes dominant over those laws, those dimensions, those angels. So basically, after each death, the angel would bow in front of Adam, and then Adam becomes uh, it captivates the law, it captures the law, becomes dominant over the law, and is no longer limited by it. So, uh, again, after this death, physical body, we leave it, we become dominant over a space dimension. The angel of space bow in front of us, and then we become dominant. Same when we go after, then the angel of time bows, and then we become dominant over time, and so on and so forth. So that expression of all the angels bow in front of Adam except Iblis, it means that throughout the cycle and from to the end point of it, Iblis, which is the holding opposition, is the only angels that would not bow throughout this dipolar universe cycle. And to the end of it, we would have opposition. Up to hell, here, the positive intelligence network and negative intelligence network, positive intelligence network Gabriel and negative intelligence network Satan, would basically accompany us to the point of hell. But after that, they don't continue, and then, but Iblis still remains. So the task of positive and negative intelligence network is up to hell, but after they just fell behind and we move on. We talk about it in depth, what happens after hell and inside the hell and so on and so forth. and also all the stages that we discuss. So now we will come back to that because that's one of the most important aspects of our discussions, and we keep coming back to it, getting deeper and deeper to the levels and explaining the details of it. But here, we want to start talking about the notion of predestination and free will. And is one of those topics that even in philosophy or many different schools of thoughts is one of the most important and also complicated um, discussions. Here we look at it very in a particular way, and um, we would like to get more familiar with it through some questions. So some questions in terms of the free will. Do we have a free will to, let's say, smoke cigarette or taking drugs and reduce our lifespan? Do we also have a free will to not smoke or not do those things that reduce our lifespan or compromises our health? Do we also have a free will to kill ourselves? Can we just end our life at any given moment in time? Are we able to live a healthy life? Are we able to also live in a polluted environment with polluted food and water and cause cancer, which cause cancer? Can we have a good hygiene, whether it's like a physical hygiene or a mental hygiene, which is a very new concept in Erfan Halgheh we'll discuss later. Considering all these questions, um, some people say like the lifespan is in hand of God. Is that true or not? The average lifespan in some countries are much higher than other countries for various reasons. Um, Now, is that a decision that God made, or how is that the factor? The other questions is that do we have free will to decide what we want to do for tomorrow? And does God know what we're gonna choose to do tomorrow? So one of the most important discussions, as I mentioned, is the predestination and free will. Um, and um, the answers and the topics that comes in this discussion is very important for many reasons. So I really encourage you to pay attention to it and really sit with it because it addresses a lot of objections that usually people have. So some people think that everything is predestined, everything is pre-written. You just basically puppets, you have no free will, everything is already decided. Um, some people even go like examining the decision making process of us and becoming aware of it takes few seconds, so the decision is made before we become aware of it, and then that use the argument saying that we don't have free will. Well, they're not aware of the secondary nervous system astral body that we discuss here. That's one of the reasons, and many other things. But we believe that we are completely have a complete free will here in some aspects. And also God is aware of all our decisions simultaneously. It doesn't have to be one or the other. It could be simultaneously. And that's what we believe here. But we should really pay attention to the fact that if God is aware of the decisions that we're making, that doesn't mean that everything is predestined and that's a decision of God. The reason that he knows is because he's in timelessness. And for him, everything's already happened and resolved and done. And he knows the final decision with our free exercise of our free will. So he knows finally If I want to decide right now to, stand up and sit down 100 times, does anything stop me? It doesn't stop me. I can't do it. Does God know what I'm going to do? Would I do that or not? And I can change my mind like 100 times within a minute. And God would know finally what I've decided, because for him, this whole entire cycle is already done in a matter of 0 second. That's why all the information is accessed and knows the final decisions of each individual and how they exercise their free will. That's why uh, he knows everything about our decisions. So that doesn't mean, again, that we are puppets and everything is predestined and we just basically operating by some prescripted scenario and don't know why we're doing the things. If that was true, I would suddenly just get up and leave. And then if someone asked me why you did it, I would say like, oh, sorry, that was like part of the script and I don't know why that happened. So this this observation in the 0 second by God would form the protective tablet, which consist of all the information within the Inna Lillahi wa Inna Ilaihi Raji'un cycle. That from uh, the beginning eternity and the end eternity would um, would basically all stored in that protected tablet. So our tomorrow is also in protected tablet, and thousands of years after us is also in protected tablet, including all the future lives that we're gonna go after each death is in protected tablet. So from our perspective, which is in motion observer, the future has not been recorded yet because we haven't experienced it, we haven't made our exercise our free will, it haven't happened yet. From the constant observer, all the events in various lives happen in a matter of 0 seconds at the beginning of a cycle, which again, the beginning or nor the end would have any definitions in timelessness. But for the sake of argument and for the lack of better word, we need to kind of like break it down to these understandable notions. Those levels of consciousness and the layers of existence are something beyond our comprehension, and the language in which that we are trying to use to explain are very difficult. And you can imagine with all this um, improved knowledge over the centuries, we still unable to explain these complicated ideas because they're qualities beyond our comprehension. Never mind 1400 years ago or 2000 years ago, 3000 years ago, for prophets to come and try to explain it to the people at that time. So there are two type of perception um, generally. There are more, but here we're gonna categorize them in two general perception. That one is everything that it is predestined, and in this way uh, there's no free will. And then there's other perspective that humans have free will and they can choose. And if we consider that if there would be a day, let's say the day of trial or the day of calculation, that Adam needs to be judged by whether he operated based on natural laws or not. If there wasn't any free will, then there wouldn't be any days as such, because anything that would happen, Adam would say like, well, I had no control over that. I'm not responsible for any of it. So why am I being even questions why I did this way or that way? I was not in control. So the only way that such a day of trial or any sorts of judgments or any sorts of um, level of existence or a world a life would exist would only have definition or possibility if there is the free will for the ones to choose between the harmonious operation and non-harmonious operation. And if for any reasons they didn't live in a harmonious operation, then there could be questions that why you didn't operate it harmoniously, why you didn't investigate it, the harmonious operation, why you didn't aim for it. So even though that we believe that human beings are do have free will in life and we can make decisions, but a lot of things are also predestined. For example, floods, earthquakes, the divine destiny, and which is hikmat, divine hikmat, the place of birth, the time of birth, the geography, etc., etc., like the body that we're in. And there are two um, predestination, as you can see in the chart, which is unknown and known. And the unknown and known predestination, that unknown is basically one that we don't know the reason behind it, and the one that is known is that we know the reason behind it. The more our knowledge increases, the more we the more the known predestinations increase and the level of unknown predestinations decrease. Just like earthquake, for example, uh, maybe hundreds of thousands of years ago, people would think that earthquake is as a result of wrath of God. But today we just perfectly know the mechanism in which that earthquake happens, and we know that it's actually essential for the life, the formation of mountains, and all the life as we know it. It was all depending on all these phenomena. So it was not actually wrath of God, but it was some essential aspects of nature that should have existed. So those unknown predestinations becomes more known predestinations. And in terms of the birth of human beings in various different lives, we believe here that we chose the infant, the consciousness emission of the infant by the knowledge of Kamal that we had from previous life. So I'm gonna explain that. When you were coming from previous life to this world, the we actually chose the infant, but we just didn't know the circumstances in which this world is operating based on. We didn't know what does it mean, what parent means. We didn't know what wealth means. We didn't know what health means. We didn't know any of the circumstances, whether limiting advantages or disadvantages circumstances that is related to that choice. But all we made the decision based on was the attractiveness that we perceived from the consciousness emission of the infant in the mother's womb. And we don't have a capability at that point to perceive the world physically, but we are just in a different dimension perceiving the infant to consciousness emission. And in that way, we are able to, if we get attracted to, we choose one over the other. And the consequences of that choice is directly related to the knowledge of Kamal that we have. And some people might say that maybe the better choice would be related to how wealthy and how easy life and how healthy the body is. But actually, the most important factor is that whether the experience would result to a um, camel oriented life, whether the alignment would be toward camel. So someone can actually be born in a very poor country or poor family, but throughout their life they actually find camel, and they would be in a better position that a person born in a wealthy family just lived their life very, very low level, uh, and just in a kind of like an instinctual level. So at the end, what we were attracted to, the consciousness emissions of the infant, was in relationship to the knowledge of Kamal that we had. And that's how we chose our body that we're in right now, again, without awareness of where we're gonna be, what is the geography, what are the circumstances of that geography, who are our parents, what belief they have, how wealthy they are, all those type of information that it affects the individual's physical experience of life. Let's go to another topic we're going to discuss tonight. And we actually have a lot to discuss. So I'm afraid that I need to cut this session short because we lost some time for questions and also the revision that was necessary to be done. So you're running out of time. I tried to kind of wrap up this section of discussion and then respect everyone's time and then discuss the rest of the material next week. So we gonna have an extra session maybe. I don't know. Actually, next session material is not that long, so I might be able to combine it in within one session. So maybe for the next session, I don't start with questions and then I just go through the material and then we keep the questions at the end. So the next topic we're going to talk about is the level of knowing God. So knowing God or knowledge of understanding God is one of the important aspects of Erfan. And in Farsi, we have like a term for it, Khoda Shanasi, and it's very hard to translate it, almost like you could say Godology or, like something like that. It's the knowledge of um, God, or knowing God. So this aims to address the complicated quality of God's existence and the paradoxes that comes with that. And one of the paradoxes is that the intrinsic nature of God has two aspects. One is an existence that is explainable or definable, and there is the existence, there's true existence that it's ineffable. So there is an explainable existence and ineffable existence. So the ineffable existence is the only true existence, and anything outside of that, anything that we relate to God in any way, is illusory and not true anymore. So when we talk about the truth and illusion, we could understand that notion through an example, like a shadow of every object is illusory in relationship to that object, even though that um, the shadow itself could have another shadow as well. And the shadow in relationship to the other shadow considers truth. So there's two relationship here. One is the relationship between the owner of the shadow in relationship to the shadow itself. So the shadow becomes illusory. And then the shadow where in relationship with its own shadow becomes truth. So I can give you other examples for you to understand it. In entire existence, this relationship exists. And in the existence, there are many different universes that each of them has a specific manifestation, that this manifestation causes the manifestation in another world. So it becomes the shadow of another shadow of another shadow. And this manifestations after manifestations after manifestations are layers of existence from which basically a process of the manifestations from that non-polar universe, that non-existence that contains all the possible information of existence, to another manifestations that is in an initial level, and then after that going to the another level. For example, let's say from the non-polar existence to unipolar existence to dipolar existence. And within the dipolar existence, we have all these infinite manifestations, species, and that we see in our world. So all these fractals of existence has various levels, going up, getting closer to God. It's not just God and suddenly boom, duality and dipolar universe manifestations, animals, plants, species, enzymes, bacteria. There's a whole entire quality expression and transformation from non-existence to more subtle or softer, for the lack of a better word, layers of existence to more harder or more rigid or more physically manifested uh, layers of existence. So there is this expression, there's this transformation that we will explain in eighth course in detail, all the layers of these shadows, as we say, to demonstrate what type of layers the manifestation had to go through for this reality to exist in a physical level, for example. So every world has a shadow, and itself is a shadow of another world, another universe. And we could say that the owner of the shadow in relationship to its shadow is true, but it's illusory in relationship to the owner of the shadow above. And each of these shadows are a universe on itself. And this continuum can go infinite negative and infinite positive on an axis, which results a continuous chain. There's a word called tasalsul, which is as opposed to it's a model that Dr. Taheri established in relationship to the afterlives and from the manifestation of from non-polar universe to back to itself, and even in the cycle that we just said in the dipolar universe from inna lillahi wa inna ilaihi raji'un. So this cycle of chain-like cycle that are continuously going from positive, infinite positive to infinite negative, and it creates universes uh, one after the other, but all would lead to one point of beginning. So all these chains of events cannot exist without the point of beginning. And that is the absolute truth. And this absolute truth is somewhere that is ineffable. There's no names, there's no attributes, there's nothing that could be said about that, because anything that we say, then we limit it to that thing. So we can't say anything about that. And that's the ultimate truth, which we cannot access it, we can't know it, we can't name it. There's nothing that can be said about the absolute truth. And it is the beginning, is the source of all the existence, all the universes. It is the divine intrinsic nature of God. So from this perspective, in one way, all these worlds are illusory in relationship to the source, but is truth in relationship to the manifestation of the universe below them. And from another point, all of them are illusory when in relationship to the absolute truth. But from another perspective, every part of existence also has truth, because everything is an image of beloved, and it contains that absolute truth. So there's nothing that would be empty of that absolute truth. There is a beautiful poetry from an Arif, Ibrat Naini, says, wherever you look, it presents a hidden observer that you cannot say whether exists, where exists, and where does not. So if you want to understand this better, uh, we should say that God is that absolute truth, the initial, that created the initial shadow, and that the initial shadow created the secondary shadow, and then so on and so forth to the infinite journey. And each of these shadows are an image of God, and everything that is manifested as a result is an image of God, is a form of God, a manifestation of God. So, or a name of God. So we can say that it is only the absolute truth, and anything else is relative to that, is illusory truth, or it's a relative truth. There's another beautiful poetry. It says that, like light that is separate from the sun, and it's not, all signs of God, all the universes is a sign of God, and it's not. In the mirror, as you see your own reflection, that reflection is you, and it's not. So, from this point, the understanding of the divine intrinsic essence of God is not possible. And that essence is way beyond any explanation or comprehension or definition. So we can't say that exists and has a being level that we could relate to or understand. But the only way we can relate and understand it is through its shadows and through its images that are testifying of its existence, is presenting and testifying its existence. So we say that the divine essence of God exists, but the existence is not the same existence that we are familiar with, and it's completely different. So we could say that uh, we could agree on certain terms to refer to that notion. So we kind of know what we're talking about, and that's Adam or non-polar. Um, these are the terms that Adam is a very common term that is used in the world of Erfan in Persia, and non-polar is what Dr. Taheri established a term to define this model, this clear model that he um, created in terms of explaining the intricacy of all the levels that the manifestation had to go through for this physical manifestation to exist and beyond. So these two terms are the aim to reduce any potential other attributes to be given to that aspects, because it's just by definition is ineffable, and we shall not give it any attribute. So the only term that we should kind of come up with, the term that we kind of can talk about it, and that's Adam, or and that's not Adam, because Adam and Adam are different. I know it might sound the same to you, but it's written differently in Farsi, but they sounds close. So it's Adam, which is whole body of uh, uh, which we are fractal of, that we are the cells of that unified body of Adam. And then we have Adam, which is the non-polar universe. So from this perspective, when we talk about the nonpolar universe, it's an existence that doesn't have any name or signs, and it's not comprehensible or understandable or definable. Now we have few more minutes. I'm gonna discuss two topics, and then I'm gonna leave the rest. Kind of halfway through, so there are a lot to discuss. The last thing I want to talk about is another important topic, which we will discuss way in depth in future courses, but we're just gonna discuss some of these features, which is in Farsi again is Jahan Shanasi. We could say it in universology, I guess, but we will find the term. For the reason that there's this infinite vastness and variety of infinite manifestations of God, there are infinite various different universes with different features and aspects that our world of which is our universe, dipolar universe, is only one of them. And the elementary introduction of these universes is an aim to understand that the entire existence is based on unity, and unity exists among all this various different universes as well. So in dipolar universe, as we mentioned, it's a universe that is based on opposition. Everything has its definition by its opposing factor, day and night, black and white, good or evil, unity, multiplicity, etc. And this is how we actually understand and define and relate to all the notions and concepts that exist. And without one, the other would not have any definitions or meanings. So the entire pillar of existence is based on this dipolar features. And the aspect and the reason, the factor behind this dual characteristic is the existence of two poles of positive virtue and negative evil. Um, so the positive network, the good, and the negative network, evil, is that it creates this opposition in the form of dipolar universe. And in the practical Erfan Halgheh, we introduce them as positive networks and negative networks. So the world that we live in, as we mentioned, is only a section, a stage in this dipolar universe. And in truth, this dipolar universe has very different stages and levels, various worlds and lives that we will go through, and we will experience one after the other. And we will pass through this and to gain experience. Our entrance to this dipolar universe started from the beginning point at the top of the cycle. And because we were not designed to eternally go distant from the initial point, there had to be a pivotal returning point, which is designed at the bottom of the cycle. And in truth, God created this dipolar universe for a purpose, and uh, that was not to eternally go toward division and multiplicity, so that there was a necessity for a return and coming back to the resolution and reunion. So in this way, all the general aspects of dipolar universe is subcategorized into descending and ascending motion, corresponding with inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi rajiun. And for this reason, this that there is this going and returning part of the cycle that have specific features, and it consists of various different lives and experiences. Now, the initiation of this cycle, the dipolar universe, was it was initiated through a dissension of another universe called the unipolar universe, which unity exists. There are no opposing factors in there, and the journey of um, us in the dipolar universe, it starts from that unipolar universe and then it ends in unipolar universe. And as we mentioned, because there is no dimension of time, so it's timeless and it happens instantaneously, and the definition of beginning or the end lose its meaning and from that perspective. And it is only in the lower stages, for example, our world, that the definition of past and present and future exists. And for us, there are some past lives and then future lives, and the time in that way exists. But um, within this within this dipolar universe, there are many stages that does not have time, and it's timeless, and we would talk about that in depth in fourth course. And going through various realms of dipolar universe from the beginning to the end um, would form this cycle that you see in the picture, which is operating in general based on opposition, and that's its main principle. So from the descending motion, there is the motion that increases the opposition, and then the return, it decreases the opposition to towards zero, and it never gets zero, because getting zero means that we are out of the cycle in unipolar universe. And one of the other aspects that increases the opposition existence of various dimensions, including time, space, and other dimensions that we don't know of for previous lives. So in this descending journey, each of these layers are getting added on, and then at the bottom of the cycle, we are the heaviest with the highest level of limiting dimensions. So in truth, as we said, the multiplicity of dimension at the bottom of the cycle and the reduction of that at the top of the cycle more toward unity is one of the aspects that we see. And then in this photo, you see that the gray demonstrating this gray area is demonstrating that increase and decrease of the opposition as the journey kind of goes closer to the bottom of the cycle. So the next topic is about the unity of existence. Um, I'm gonna I can keep going if everyone's okay, or we can just leave it for next week. So let me know if you're okay with going maybe an extra 15 minutes. And I try to see if we can finish it in 15 minutes. Everyone okay with that? Okay, I see some thumbs ups. All right. Okay, if you absolutely need to go, I respect your time, no problem. We will post a recording, so you won't miss it. So the unity of existence is one of the important discussions in Erfan Halgheh, and it is a truth aspect about existence that we can't really deny it, and for that reason we can establish the understanding that the God is unified, is one, and also for that the shadow of that also needs to be one. And we could say that this universe is the image of God, and it has to have this uniformity to demonstrate that unity. And this multiplicity that we observe in this universe itself is in unity, and it is operating based on unity. And that's how we see that all these opposing factors are working together as a system, as one unified body, and that represents this existing unity, even though that what we see might be a multiplicity. And this type of logic, our perception on existence is based on limited by the space and time dimension, and with such a perception, what we see is the disintegrated aspects of existence, and the unity of that is not quite evident. The life and the dimension of within the dimension of time causes everything to be separated from each other to create moments past, separated from present, separated from future. And that's how we can experience moment by moment. And such separation, it starts from the beginning and goes to a certain point, and that naturally causes this divisions, this cuts in the time that takes away the continuity in a way, but it also does it in a very specific time, a specific way, that the continuity, and we have the continuity of the image, and we have the space dimension that it kind of like got us used to touch things and um, kind of relate to them, that in a very specific way. So anything that is kind of disintegrated within the dimension of time and space, uh, just like the factors that are separated from past to the future, uh, we see them all disintegrated and not connected to each other. So the unity of existence is not perceived quite evident. But if we could go beyond time, we could acquire a new perception that would give us such an image that everything would be really, uh, everything would be connected to each other, and it would actually give a very quite bizarre image of the actuality of existence, in a way that everything is connected to something else, just like a root. Imagine if our image of childhood would be connected to the image of us now, and then connected to the image of us in elderlyhood, and our childhood image is connected to our parents' image, and then so on and so forth. So this bizarre image that is this continuous creature would eventually form a unified tree of existence, and which has like the trunk and then the root and then the branches. So the type of image that we would see, the entire manifestation and creation of Adam would be looking like a tree. And that's why in the story of Adam's creation, he's being advised to not get close to that tree, because tree is resembles the journey to the uh, dipolar universe, and having a fruit of that tree is also, fruit is the result of the tree. And then basically one of the notion uh, that is being said to Adam at that moment is to, if you have a bite of that fruit, you become eternal like God. And that basically has its risk, of course, and then because it's considered a violation, but then he actually decides to do that and then have a bite of it and come through the cycle, and the fruit representing the conclusion and result of that experience of the tree becoming eternal just like God is quite corresponding with the notion that we go through the cycle and come out experienced enough to be able to sits on God's throne and become his successor and be able to embody beloved's attribute. We will get to that later. I just give you a very short and concise kind of review. But in terms of the observer, if an observer would go beyond certain level, uh, limited by the dipolar universe, then it can see everything at the same time in a timeless manner, and then everything just changes it completely different, and that that unity of existence become quite evident. So such a experience is only possible on this step of ishq, and obviously is not an experience that could be measured or be approached through a logical lens. And we can only use logics to kind of assess and examine the sanity of the information of such experiences and its correspondence with other notions, and if there are any contradictions. Um, so if we could look at someone um, throughout time, the image would become very continuous and then form that tree. Now, if everything that exists here that are disintegrated, and we can see various different objects from each other, various different people and various different times, if we could become dominant over time and see everything, it gives us this understanding that everything is a cell of one body. We are each other. We are cells of a one bigger body. And that experience changes a lot for how we relate to each other, how we relate to other species, how we relate to our nature. And we really understand that we are sharing one root and on an intrinsic level. And this would change a lot for how we operate, how we relate to each other, and etc. And that could be very, very transformative. In fact, that level of awareness could make heaven like earth. So it is possible to have such an experience, but it takes that kind of level of awareness collectively to be able to um, be transformed by such an experience and implement that in our life collectively. So this such an alignment and connections with among various creatures becomes evidence in such an experience that forms this root and trunk of the tree, and then the entire body of unified body of existence, forming this unified, like single tree of dipolar universe that represents the entire cycle. And considering this uniformity and unity among all the constituents part of it, it becomes that unified body that each parts would be interconnected and interrelated and has equal value, as without each of them, the entire body could not exist. So if human being becomes aware of such an understanding of unity, we would not able to object of the existence of any of aspects of existence, from people to insects or animals, or some natural laws, and we would really become aware of the necessity of the existence of every single part of the this massive existence. So this understanding that creation of no creature is coincidental or redundant, and every constituent aspects of existence is toward fulfilling the highest goals of creation. An unaware human being is like a cherry that is attached to the cherry tree, to the branches, and perceives itself as an independent cherry from any other cherries around, uh, and not even realizing the roles of the leaves and the branches and the trunk and the roots. and the air around and everything that is necessary for the existence of that cherry right there. So if one would have an understanding of that unity of the existence, then the person would be equipped with such a perceptions that not only see every aspects of existence as a divine image of God in existence, but also would not allow themselves to be to doing wrong in any aspects of existence in any way, because everything becomes the cells of their own body, and with such an understanding it becomes aware of the truth that the existence of himself or herself is encompassing everything else, and vice versa. So this unified body of Adam, which consists of all the human beings lived before in history right now and then in future, forms the cells of the Adam's body. And Adam, at the beginning of the creation, was created in the unipolar universe, and because of the lack of time, was able to perceive that unified tree. And there was the pair, which was Eve, misinterpreted again as a female character, and sometimes even a female character that lived on Earth, but is basically representing uh, and necessities that would allow Adam to come to the dipolar universe and experience life, and the aspect that was given from dipolar universe. There was other aspects that was given to Adam from unipolar universe. We will discuss that later. So by perceiving the this unified tree, Adam going toward it, it's a metaphor that resembles the journey that Adam had to go through to become aware and access the knowledge of Kamal, accompanied by Eve, which are all the necessities, including the layers of existence, the softwares that was necessary to be able to go through this journey. And from one perspective, getting Adam getting close to that tree, initiating the journey and dissension, being accompanied by Eve, which was a necessity, was a choice that had to happen so Adam would not remain in a heaven of unawareness with no purpose or um, no ability to embody or have the knowledge of Kamal to access the beloved's attributes that was given. So he let go of the comfort of the heaven of unawareness for the sake of accessing a knowledge and information and gaining experience through the journey of dipolar universe to be able to embody the potential that was gifted by God in the moment of creation, the spirit that he gave to Adam, but Adam didn't have awareness how to use it and to embody it. So remaining in the heaven with no effort or endeavor or any necessary challenge would not really help him to become aware and be able to access the divine treasure box of divine attributes that God was God given. And he took the chance and came out of the comfort zone and um, took the risk of the journey in order for that meaning of embodying names of God through gaining experience, going through the life cycles, various experiences, experiencing moment by moment, uh, falling and getting up, experiencing love in different ways, and relating to God in various different ways through its names, and understanding bit by bit, gaining an experience that would make him a successor of God, an embodiment of divine attributes that can glorify the existence and the purpose of creation. The last topic we're going to talk about, just a few more minutes, is the categories of um, RFs and in terms of the journey that they go. There's this term Ahle Erfan. Ahl means that it's very difficult to translate. Ahl is like you could say like um, the people of Erfan, and you can say that in general, individuals uh, of people of Erfan are approaching the path of Erfan in four general ways. And these are very important categorization because through this definition, we can understand the uniqueness of Erfan journey, and we can also have a clear understanding of other journeys and their definitions and their feature to avoid any confusion between each path. So the first one is self-relying, self-oriented. Um, Individuals that their goal in life, it's not getting closer to beloved God, and all their attention is toward their self profiting and self benefiting goals. These individuals also rely on their own effort, endeavor, skills, and abilities to hit their target and get their goal. So, individuals that, for example, in order to achieve peace, they use um, methods of concentration, imagination, um, practices, and things like that. So, what they're achieving in the path of Erfan, they're aiming not necessarily closeness to God, but rather they're after qualities that it's beneficial for them on an individual level, achieving peace or achieving self-control, or confidence, things like that. Uh, and then the way that they try to get that is through their self-reliant methods that relies on their own abilities, own determination, practices, concentration, imagination, etc. There second type of people, which is self-relying, God-oriented, and these individuals are putting their main goal is their own self um, benefiting attributes or qualities, which is peace, happiness, and not necessarily closeness to God. But in order to get to those qualities, they're relying on on God's help, and that becomes self oriented, God reliant. There's the third types that it's God oriented, self reliant, which means that these individuals are aiming to become close to God and connected to Him, but they're relying on their own ability, their own determination, their own effort, endeavor, practices, their um, own ways. And considering that that would fall under the individual connection, it requires individuals to have extreme enthusiasm, extreme level of despair, and persistency and consistency, and take years to establish that individual connection only for the purpose in which the person is seeking, and it would remain individual um, connection as well, and it does not allow the individuals to actually share it with others, and it would be somewhat a manifestations of selfishness because they kind of save themselves and everyone else is kind of left behind, in a way. The fourth is God oriented, God reliant, which is what it is in Erfan Halgheh. Individuals that they put their ultimate goal, closeness, unity, and connections with God, and that closeness and connection is all they consider it not possible without beloved's help. And when we say uh, ma'rifat, it's something that is the understandings that are necessary in an Irfanic journey for such connections. And understanding these type of features in Irfan, it would form two type of Irfan that are oppositional, which is Irfan Kamal and Irfan of power. And we could say that in the journey of Kamal, individuals would encounter these two circumstances and two aspects of Irfanic journey. Uh, but this discerning and distinguishing these two are something that was unique to Erfan Halgheh, and before this, there was no clarification in such a clear way that these had, and then categorizing in such a clear way. And a lot of individuals assume that the abilities that they gain is as a result of a spiritual sublimity, and they didn't know that it actually how to, these things are not positive. And among a lot of the spiritual figures, very great spiritual figures in history, we see that many of them actually use this power, even though that they were prophets and so on. So for the first time in human history, this clear characterization and more guidance in terms of how to discern one from the other is one of the simple yet extremely important factors in a spiritual, collective spiritual journey for for humanity. So marifat, it only refers to the divine knowledge that belongs to the world of Kamal and not power. So without marifat, human being would remain in pain, the pain of separation, aloneness, confusion, feeling lost. But by utilizing this divine attributes, this spiritual rewards that it's given by God, so we can be familiar with the unconditional aspects of love, knowing that you're not left alone in this world full of dualities and full of pain and full of challenges, and knowing that regardless of where we are and what we've done and who we are and what qualities we have or not, despite of our lackings and mistakes and faults, there's this always remaining open door of beloved's love that is waiting us to embrace us and holds us to helps us within our Kamal journey to fulfill the divine purpose of creation. And we can see and experience this ultimate mercifulness of God with the ultimate kindness that would guide us toward Kamal and to help us fulfill our true role and stand strong, um, knowing that God is behind us and got our back, and not in a theoretical level and uh, too optimistic, hopeful, psychologically rewarding way, but rather actually um, knowing that there is something behind us that protects us, and then we're allowing that to transform us, and then let ourselves in the safe hands that guides us toward only the knowledge of Kamal, and with protections and guidance and um, illumination that is necessary for the remaining in the path protected. So this divine marifat is something that to be experienced and not to be heard, not to be convinced of, not to be proven, but rather something that it needs to come from within, that fire within, that its presence as a result of the experience of the love of God. There's a beautiful poetry that really resembles that invitation that we need to stand up and travel in the world of Erfan so we can taste it finally. It says like behind the seas there is a city, that there the windows are opening toward the manifestations of God. The roofs are the place of the birds that are staring at the fountains of the human's intelligence. In the hand of every 10-year-old child, there is a branch of divine ma'rifat. The people of the town are looking at a reason and a causality that is related to a flame and a gentle sleep. Earth and the soil is hearing the music of your emotions. The sound of the birds, of the legendary birds, are coming through the winds. Behind every sea, it's a city in which in it the vastness of sun is as the big eyes of the ones who wake up at dawn. So with that, I'm gonna finish the theoretical material of tonight and hope to see you next week.